Bharata, which is the Hindu religion, their book. I looked a little into Islam, but that kind of bored me. I didn't really like that. And I found some books on Wicca. A lot of Wiccans deal with nature, deal with stones and crystals, particularly as a big thing in Wicca. And I would spend my nights by the fire, doing little light spells with Wicca, and some things would work, some things wouldn't, and I would just write down the things that would work and forget the parts that wouldn't work, and then I would build on to that. So it started with Wicca, and then I had always had an obsession with immortality. That was the thing on my mind. It's like, we live and we die, what's the purpose of all of this? If there's a way to be immortal, I want to know about it. And that brought me into the Egyptian Book of the Dead, other, like, Jainism, all sorts of different worldly religions that I searched through trying to find the answer. I mean, I even have a tattoo of the I-Force on my shoulder. I was just obsessed with immortality, so I kept searching more books and more books and more books until I had a giant stack of them. I would take all the information from it that I could gather and I'd start implementing them and making spells. And that's when I kind of gravitated towards witchcraft. So after Wicca came witchcraft. And that's when I started seeing spells actually work. Like, a few things in Wicca did work here and there, but not enough that it had an impact on me. But when I got into witchcraft, that's when things started working, and that's what made a big impact on my life at that time. So,
yeah, well, okay, that's quite a lot already. So you said that you moved at 10 from Toronto to Prince Edward Island, which is very remote. And Prince Edward Island in and of itself is kind of remote, but there are cities, but you were, in the remote part of Canada. And you were bitter to your mom for bringing you there. And you started looking into all these things. Did she ever know? Did you ever talk to anyone about that? Because you talked about Wicca and then witchcraft, and it seemed to be a very fast transition. Did anyone else know about it?
When I was into Wicca and starting to learn about witchcraft, I don't think she did. To be honest, like, a lot of time I was up late at night, looking at the stars, trying to find the right celestial pattern for certain spells that I was doing. She knew I was staying up late, whatever. I don't think she knew about it because I just felt like I didn't have to share that with her. It was something that I was learning myself, and even if I were to explain it or talk to her about it, I don't think she would have understood. It's possible she would try and stop it, if anything, so I kind of kept it hidden from her and my sisters.
Okay, you mentioned Wicca, and I've heard about Wicca, but maybe not everyone's familiar with it. So can you explain, in general terms, what Wicca is, and then what kind of spells would you do at the beginning?
I didn't spend a whole lot of time in Wicca. I just remember the spells a lot related to nature. I remember reading about white Wiccan magic and dark Wiccan magic, which it's all dark, to be honest with you. A lot of them had to do with stones, crystals, like blessing them in a certain way to draw either money to you, draw people to you that you want them to pay attention to you in a love sense, sexual wise. There was a lot of tree worship, there was a lot of fire worship, like a lot of the elements were a big thing in Wicca. Some of it is also a thing in witchcraft, but I found it was more so in Wicca, and with my love for nature at that time, I felt that was a perfect balance. But I always wanted something more, like this wasn't doing it for me. These little spells that sometimes they would work, sometimes they wouldn't, and it was unreliable. So there is something there with Wicca, but I wanted something more than that. So that's when I went straight into witchcraft and started searching out that room and things.
Yeah, I've noticed that a lot, if not most of the people that get into witchcraft usually have a very fast progression from, milder things to very intense things. How was it for you? You said you didn't spend a whole lot of time in Wicca and you wanted more. How fast was the process of, changing from one thing to another? And how was the progression of the intensity of the spell and the darkness of it at the same time?
I would say say it was probably about a year, maybe a year and a half, when I discovered Wicca and then went into witchcraft. Because I remember I was playing hockey, and my mom had told me that you will get $2 for every assist that you have, and $1 for every goal, which sounds weird because you think a goal is worth more money. But she said, no, an assist is as good as a goal. So when I would play hockey games, I would start using basic witchcraft spells that I started using. And, you know, I'd be getting assists, goals, left, right, center. You know, I was slowly becoming one of the top players on my team. And, you know, that's when I noticed that witchcraft was kind of working. It's a real life application that it does work. And
buy crypto in 8 steps. Create your account and verify your identity. Then complete the suitability assessment.
that also ties into one of my first money spells that I did. And I did the spell, and I was walking in a mall in Summerside, Prince Edward Island, and I found a $5 bill on the ground. And I picked it up, and to me, that was like the first time that's ever happened to me. The only other time I found money was a $2 bill in Toronto as a little kid. So I'd never found money just lying there. And $5 was worth a little bit more than it is now, but it was still too weak. I wasn't satisfied with it. I'm like, if this is all money spells brings me, like $2 here, $1 in a hockey tournament, $5 bill walking around, and I didn't want that. What I was feeling inside me at that time, I was angry. I was mad at everybody. I hated my sister, I hated my mom, I hated any people at school, I hated most of my teammates on my hockey team. I was just a very angry individual. Like, if you looked at me wrong walking down the road in town, I would come up to you and I would confront you. It really sucks looking back to see how I was as a person. But the more I got into witchcraft, I kind of had a hook there where I knew it was still real, that part of life was real, that I found some sort of secret, but I built off of that in a way that started in birth itself as pure hatred. So I didn't really focus too much on love spells or money spells. What I liked was curses. I used to have a saying, I'm not gonna put the swear word in there, but I used to say, if you mess with me, you mess with me times 3. And that means, like, if you did something wrong to me, I would do 3 times as worse back to you, and I would use witchcraft to do that. So I would purposely be nice to people. I would go out of my way to help people, just so that when they turned against me or rubbed me the wrong way, then I had a reason to get back at you. It's like, okay, I was completely nice to you. I treated you like gold, and you're going to do this to me? Boom, there's my reason. And then I'd instantly go into witchcraft and do a curse spell. Not so much hexes, but curses were my thing because they worked, and they worked well. And that's what I did for a long period of my teenage years, you know, look for opportunities to curse somebody. That's the type of guy I was. It was not good.
And how old are we talking about? You said teenage years, but that's quite a long amount of time.
Yeah, 15, 16, like 14 and a half, 15, 16, into 17, but at that range I had gone into Satanism at that point. So witchcraft was always kind of a constant thing, but there was a separation from witchcraft to Satanism, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So not a lot of people take witchcraft as far as you did, but there's a lot of people that have experiences with Ouija boards. And I know that you did quite a fair amount of that as well. Can you talk about your experiences with Ouija board and what they were like?
Sure. So Ouija board was an interesting thing because as I got darker and darker into things, like I was taking pleasure in seeing, you know, a person who was wrong to me last week getting deathly sick because of a sickness spell that I did on them, or somebody's parents having their marriage fail because they yelled at me when I was at a sleepover. There's so many instances that showed me that this was working, but there was an element to it where I needed more power. I was very selfish, I was prideful, I hated a lot of people, and that's kind of what got me into Satanism. at that point, around like 17, 16, 17, that's when I started researching into Satanism. And when I was reading about Satanism, what I had quoted was the Satanic Bible. But to me, honestly, that wasn't what I was looking for. When I read it, I kind of thought it was a joke. Looking back at it, it's just a slick way to get people interested in Satanism by lying and saying, oh, this is good, we believe in good values, treat everybody nice, treat others like you want to be treated. It's a veil. It's just a hook that draws people into it. That's all it is. But the reality behind Satanism is a lot darker. And I was never a part of a coven. That was one thing, like I hated people, right? You couldn't get me to a coven. I don't want to be around other people. I just want to be by myself, and I want to do these spells, which work. And I remember getting a Ouija board. I ordered a Ouija board, came in, started playing with it myself. It didn't work right away, but after doing it a few weeks, it started to. And that's when I was like, okay, finally, I have someone to talk to, and then it would move on its own. And then I was communing with spirits. They said that they were friends. That's how they always talk to you, especially if you're just getting into it. They always want to let you know that they're like your best friend, and then they'll feed you pride. Like, you're the only one, we've chosen you, even, where they appeal to your pride and ego. And I thought I had found the secret. I started calling myself a Satanist, but I'm not really sure if it was that. I was a worshiper of Satan and the devil. But I wasn't in a coven or anything like that. It was just me, the demons, and I knew Satan existed because demons talked about him. They said that he was a good man who still lives. So I never really talked to Satan, but I would talk to like his children, I guess, is what they were telling me they were. So they would help me in my further spells. They would tell me, no, you did this wrong. You need to do this at this specific time of the night, like between 3 and 4 in the morning. You need to do this on a lunar cycle. You need to do this on a blue day. You need to do this in the winter solstice. You know, all of these tips. You need to use a pink candle instead of a white one. You need to use intent, emotion, and a picture or a piece of DNA from someone for this spell. Like, that's another thing is, in a lot of witchcraft spells, they'll use either a picture of you or a piece of your hair or something from you. Like, say if you're drinking out of a pop can, or use this an example, and they put it down on a table, like in a cafeteria or somewhere, I would grab that and I would take it home with me. And I would use that in a spell. And I was learning all of this for years. So it wasn't just me making it up. The first part of witchcraft was me learning what works, what doesn't. The second part, when I was gravitating to Satanism, I was still doing witchcraft, but it was of a much darker nature, where demonic entities, as I know them now, were teaching me how to do them and how to get better at doing them.
Gravity with your feet up, check. Feet up, knowing what, where, and when. Check, check, and check. Delivered in as little as 25 minutes, check.
I find it interesting that you mentioned about DNA, and I don't necessarily know if that's what it is, but it just brought up something in my mind where people that are not too familiar with these things, they kind of think that, you know, spells and curses are just like magic things that you send into the air and somehow something happens. But the more I've talked to people, and I think you would echo a similar sentiment, that curses essentially you're assigning a demon to a specific task. And so when you started talking to the demons, that's why they got so much more efficient, because you were communicating with them and they would actually go and do whatever curse. And DNA or a picture of the person, in my mind, and I don't know if this is how people should get, but in my mind it's like it's helping the demon to recognize who the person you're talking about actually is, so they actually know it's the right person. So I did find that interesting, but you said that they were telling you to do things, and I'm wondering, did they ever tell you to do something that you're like, no, this is too far, I'm not going to do that?
Yeah. That's kind of when I stopped becoming a Satanist. I had talked to people all over the place when I would meet them in public, try to get them to believe in Satan, telling them that he was on the good side of things. He actually cared for you, and trying to draw them in. And I was also in a band at that time. It was a very worldly band, but I would sneak little bits of spells into my lyrics, which were veiled. Like, you couldn't really figure out what I was doing with my lyrics, but there were spells in my lyrics. Basically, everything that I had to do was draw people away from the truth of things, which they never really explained to me. Like, I knew that Satanism, witchcraft, that was a secret that I found out. That everything about it is true, and not too many people know about it. So, they're on their own. I got it, I know it, and that's what it's going to be. At no time did they ever tell me about God. Like, God is evil or something like that. Like, I've heard people say that, but at no time they spoke of God. And the more I got into it, the higher I started rising. It doesn't make sense, but the more power I felt, I guess is the way I could put it. I felt like I could do anything because, like you said, it was the demons who do it. Because I got really prideful when talking to the demons, and I said, whoever does this, I'll just smite them, or I'll do this. And it's like, no, not you, us. And I was like, oh, okay. So I started to understand it was them doing it through my command. I was giving them the orders to do it, but it wasn't me doing it. It was the demons themselves on my behalf that were doing it. So that kind of knocked my pride a little bit, but still I thought I was in charge. I started growing in more power, and then I asked them, what's the next step? What do I do to get to a higher level? And that's when they mentioned the destruction of innocence, is what they called it, where that's where you get into abuse of children. And like I had mentioned before, my mom, she was a foster parent, so we had kids all the time. And even though I hated people, I still hated people, everyone, every kind, but I still didn't think that was right. To steal a child's innocence in any possible way possible, whether it be sexually, whether it be spiritually, teaching them evil things, or even teaching them how to do darkness themselves, or, killing them. Like, I wouldn't even kill a rabbit. Like, I love nature, so that was a part of me. The only thing I would use for spells in that sense, because some were of sacrificial nature, I would use insects. Like, I would use an ant, or I'd use a beetle, or I'd use a bee. I would use these things, or sometimes many of them, so that I wouldn't have to use a cat or a dog. I know it sounds strange, but these things did work in place of those. And there was also, it was the children stuff, destruction of innocence, but there was also the death of love. And what that is murdering a family member or somebody that you love, the person that you love the most in your life, whether it be your daughter, your son, your mother, your father, or your grandparents. One of them must be killed as a sacrifice to obtain higher status and to get more powerful demons to reside with you instead of the ones I was dealing with at that time. Because other ones would come in from time to time, and that's when I started to know that there was a hierarchy in the demonic kingdom, which I didn't understand right away. But when I was in simple witchcraft, it was lower caste demons, I would say, and then they grew higher, especially the one that taught me about the destruction of innocence and the death of love. That's what I called them, because that's what they told me. Like, at this point in time, I was learning strictly on what they were telling me. I wasn't looking at other books. I found most books actually to be wrong, and I would see this is where they did it wrong. Oh, they did it at this time of night. Totally wrong. Piece of failure. Like, how do you guys not know these things? And there was a certain sense of pride in that. But that's when I stopped becoming a Satanist, because I saw the end result and I wanted nothing to do. I thought that's pretty disgusting in all levels. Like, there's obviously got to be a way to gain higher power than doing any of these things, but that's how it was. Who claim that they're on the good side of things, and I started to kind of see the veil slipping from my eyes, and I started to see what they truly were, and they were just extremely evil, full of darkness. Is basically what I was dealing with.
employing millions of people around the world who use Remitly to send money to their loved ones. Our customers highly...
Hey, I'm pausing here just to let you know that if you want more details about this testimony, whether you want more context about what happened before, or you have questions that have been asked, then consider joining us on Locals. We put out a bunch of extra content there, like the extra footage, which is everything that happened before the story started, or the after show, which is what happened after, along with the advice we guests have for you. There's also whole other episodes that are not available anywhere else, so why don't you go check it out? It's free to join. You don't have anything to lose and have a whole lot to gain. It also helps us to remain independent and fight censorship. So if you're interested, the link will be in the description. You can head over there after the episode. Alright, now let's get back to the story. There's so many interesting things that you mentioned, because this is exactly what I've heard from other people that engaged in, black magic. And I had a gentleman on the interview. He wasn't doing that with someone that he knew, and he had learned from people close to him. Betraying someone close to you, they called it a Judas ritual, which you mentioned, and the destruction of innocence. Those words specifically were not used before in anyone that I've talked to, but it's a pattern that you see. And there's something, I don't want to go too far without actually asking this question, because you talked about putting spells into your lyrics when you're making songs.
Right.
I'm just curious, and maybe you don't have an answer, but would you be able to recognize if someone did that? Like, did you ever see songs maybe on the radio and you're like, this looks like there's something like that? Is there something there?
Oh yes. I see a lot of it, especially in heavy metal, death metal. A lot of it are just strictly spells. But even a lot of pop songs, like I hear it in mainstream artists. I'm not going to really mention too many, but read their lyrics again. Hear what they're actually saying, because it's not all fluffy, nice, teeny bobby lyrics. These are actual spells that they're doing, bringing their songs. And because they're so famous, I mean, I question what they have done to get there. And the fact that I see obvious spells in their lyrics, I mean, I could just imagine. But yeah, I see it a lot.
Yeah, no, I believe you, and I've heard about it, but that's why I wanted to ask you a question as someone that actually did that. You definitely have a better idea than I would, and that people that don't know about this kind of stuff would. So, let's go back to the demons, and when they told you to the next step to gain more power was the destruction of innocence and destruction of love or whatever. You obviously refused that. You were like, no, I'm not going to do that. This is evil, and you recognized that this was evil. What happened after you rejected it?
Well, first they said the destruction of innocence and explained it. And I said I wasn't doing that. There's no way, you can't get me to do that. And I was like, there's got to be another way. And then that's when they said death of love. And so they explained that. So I was like, I'm not doing that either. So I just put it away. I got up, I remember like smoking a joint. I got really drunk that weekend, and I just kind of forgot about it, to be honest. This is during a time where I was becoming homeless too. I had moved with two friends to Halifax, Nova Scotia, and we were all homeless at this time. So I just focused my life on getting high, trying all sorts of drugs. I've probably tried every single drug there is, other than heroin, because I don't like needles. But I've gone through crack cocaine, crystal meth, ecstasy, Dilaudid, morphine, weed all the time, every day, drinking all the time. And I just kind of went from doing Satanism, I guess, if you want to call it that, and doing works for the devil, preaching to people on the street about Satan, to purely distracting myself from all of it. Like, just getting as high as I can, just forgetting about it completely, and that's the road I was in. There was only one other time after that I did commune with the demons, and I had forgot about that in my testimony, but it was me, these two guys, I won't name them, but we had invited a prostitute over to our house, and we played the Ouija board on her stomach as she laid there. She started like getting very uncomfortable, and we could see that, and we're just like, I remember my buddy right here, he's like, we'll pay you more, just stay there. And she said, no, my stomach hurts too much. And she got up and put the board away, and we're like, okay. And then she just left. But then that to me was like, okay, I can't even use the Ouija board without someone getting hurt. So it kind of topped it off there, and I was like, I'm done with this, basically. I don't want anything to do with this, and I kind of just didn't want to do it anymore, and stopped doing everything associated with witchcraft and Satanism.
Yeah, I think one of the lessons of your testimony, we're actually going to get to more of it, is that even though you had rejected Satanism and the demons, they did not leave you alone. That's not how it works. So, can you talk about what happened in the years following you leading Satanism? What happened in the years following?
Attention, car owners. There's a free tool right here that can get you thousands of pounds in compensation. You see.
Okay, so me and my friend Mike, I will mention his name because it comes up later in the story. We decided that we're done with being poor and broke and homeless, so we're going to move to Saskatchewan. We decided to hitchhike across Canada, so we got as far as, I think, Ottawa, and that's when his father paid for our bus ticket all the way to Saskatoon. So we got to Saskatoon, and we were jonesing pretty hard for drugs. We didn't know anybody, we were still new in the town, and we met this guy who was working at a 7-Eleven store. His name was Boyd, and we said, hey, do you know any hookups? And he got us hooked up with cocaine and weed, and we're like, great. So we started a friendship with him. He invited us over to his house. He had a girlfriend at that time named Jermaine, and we were buddies with them, and we started smoking weed with them, and just being really friendly. And out of the blue, this is kind of where my testimony starts. I was in my apartment with Mike, and there was another girl named Megan and another guy named Del. He was sitting on the ground eating ice cream. Megan was eating her ice cream, and I was behind the door eating ice cream around the corner. And we hear this buzzer, and we weren't expecting anybody, so we're like, that's kind of strange. And I looked at Megan, and she's like, no. And like, there's no way she knows who this is. Like, why is she telling me no? Maybe she's just high and paranoid or something. But I was like, whatever. I buzzed it, and they're like, hey, it's Lloyd Jermaine, can we come up for a couple smokes? I'm like, sure. Doesn't mean she's like, no. And then she just gave up, and I'm like, what's the big deal? I'm like, it's just them. So went back to eating my ice cream on the ground, and that's when I hear the door open, shuts. I see Jermaine. She's walking right down the hallway to Mike's bedroom. They've never been to our apartment, so it was really strange that she even knew where his bedroom was. Maybe she thought it was mine. And she had a crowbar in her hand, and I thought that was strange. So she starts walking really fast to Mike's room. So I put my ice cream down and I start standing up, and that's when Lloyd comes right in front of me, and he pulls out this monkey wrench. It's like the biggest wrench I've ever seen, and he just hauls off, hits me right across the temple. I started seeing stars, and I was so confused. I was trying to get my bearings, but I didn't have enough time because he put the wrench around my head, and he kind of bent me over, so I kind of knew what he was trying to do. He was reaming over so that he could go back and like break my neck or something, do something really bad. He already smoked me in the head at this time. So I had grabbed onto the wrench, and I jumped in the air as he went backwards, because he's way bigger than me, way heavier. I knew I probably would have been toast if I didn't do that. So we go up in the air like that, and I scream, Mike, Mike. Goes up again, and I scream again, Mike, Mike. And it just kind of went like this a few times. Jermaine hears me, she starts running towards me, and she punches me in the family jewels. She grabs onto them and puts one leg on my upper thigh, one leg on my other shin, and she's like trying to like pull them off, I guess. He had my neck like this, so I couldn't do anything, and she has my lower half like that. And that's when I said, if there's a God at all in this world, like if there's a God, please save me, because I'm about to die. And that's when I remember not thinking about it. It just happened where my hand flew forward, it hit Jermaine in the face, and her glasses flew off, so she can't really see that good with her glasses being off. And I knew that, so that's what kind of gave me a little bit of time.